Michael, how are you? Okay. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to 47th Street and 2nd Avenue in front of the UK Consulate. We're here today in support of Julian Assange. For the people who are here in the location, I want to say that it's essential for us to keep the pathway open for pedestrians to walk by. So if you have a sign, please stand against this wall that I'm standing in front of. And if you've got a camera, stand on the other side of the sidewalk with all the other cameras. I also want to tell people that at the information table, you can use the information there and letters to contact Merrick Garland to stop the persecution of Julian Assange, no extradition. So for us to get underway here, I want to introduce Randy Credico. You go that way.
It's okay. I don't mind if I get it again. Thank you, Chuck, and thank you all for coming out, and the press. I wish we had MSNBC, the New York Times, the Guardian out here today. This is the beginning. On short notice, we put this thing together willy-nilly, and we have some wonderful activists and other supporters who will be dropping by along the way. This is the issue of our time. This case, Julian Assange. This is the gateway to the destruction of your jobs as journalists. If Julian Assange goes down, that's just the beginning. That is muzzling the First Amendment, and then everybody else is next. So we have to stand. Although it may seem like a lost cause to some people, and as Jimmy Stewart said, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, those are the most important causes to go after, are lost causes. But it isn't. You see this tie I have today? I got this in 2006 in Buenos Aires by the woman by the name of Tati Almeida and 3 of her friends, Enrique Moroni, Yorona Bolocchio, and one other. And they were part of a group called the Madres de Plaza de Mayo. Their kids were murdered, kidnapped and murdered with the support of the U.S. in 1975. And it was an ironclad dictatorship. But they stood up. They went in front of the Pink House, the government house, every Thursday, as Roger and I and Katie talked about last night, every Thursday, every week, until those people, the world saw it, were gone in 1981, and they ushered in a democracy. Those women, it was a lost cause, but they did it. So I'm not going to say, we have a lot of people who have a lot to say. I'm going to begin by introducing this. We are going to win this because everybody has something at stake here. You have your jobs at stake. We who are radio hosts or podcasters or entertainers, we have our livelihoods and our freedom at stake. You better take this seriously as we stand in front of this U.S. colony consulate called the UK. It's a colony of the U.S. That's all it is. We used to be one of their colonies. Now they're one of our colonies. And they do exactly what we tell them to do. Let me introduce a civil rights attorney, longtime civil rights attorney, who's been involved in so many struggles over the past 4 decades. She is the great Margaret Cunsler. Give her a round of applause.
Thank you. I think that it's clear now that... Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Who's next?
Julian is in jail because he tells the truth. I think we've learned that liars are everywhere. They are necessary for this government to continue. For us to go to war, we need lies. We need lies to survive in this country. That's what it's about. But someone who tells the truth has to be locked up. And that's the dangerous situation that we're in today. And we have to be clear that we have to free all of the truth tellers, because without them, we're in tremendous danger. We don't have enough media. We don't have press. We don't have investigative reporters who are bold enough to tell the truth. And what we do is put truth tellers in jail. We're in a terrible situation. And that's why it's so important that we support Julian, because we're not only supporting Julian, we're supporting the last remnant of truth in this country. And that's what we have to do. And we have to take to the streets to do it, because the liars are in control. And I ask you all to publish this and to be aware of the problems that we're having today, and aware of the fact that we have fascism developing, and that if we don't stand up against it, there won't be any truth tellers left. So I ask you all to pay attention to this and be firm and be on the streets to demonstrate. Thank you.
You didn't get it all. All right, Margaret Cunsler. Now we're going to bring up someone who's been fighting for the last 11 years since his brother was arrested by the Brits and then put in the embassy and then in prison the last couple of years.
The microphone.
Okay, I will, Roger.
Jesus.
I haven't been in show business in a couple of years. But he's been there. He's been traveling around the world, and this is his brother, Gabriel Shipton. Give him a big round of applause.
Hi, everyone. On Friday, the UK High Court approved the extradition of my brother Julian Assange. Julian has 2 weeks to lodge an appeal to the Supreme Court. But what this decision shown, I think, is that we can no longer rely on the UK to stop this extradition, and that the prosecution of Julian needs to be dropped here in the US. The UK has no First Amendment. They have no press freedom protection like you do here in the US. So we can't rely on them to stop this prosecution. I just want a massive thank you, obviously, to everybody who's come out today. It's great to see everyone here. The case against Julian, the prosecution against Julian, which is the first of its kind under the Espionage Act. He's the first publisher and journalist to be charged under the 1917 Espionage Act. Until now, the Espionage Act has been for whistleblowers. It's only been whistleblowers being prosecuted. So this is it is an attack, like direct attack on press freedom, a direct attack on the First Amendment by the US DOJ, and it needs to be stopped. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks.
All right, Gabriel Shipton, we're going to move it right along. The co-host of Useful Idiots with Matt Taibbi, and the host of the Katie Halper Show. Say hello, Katie Halper.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm kind of surprised that Biden doesn't have more empathy for Julian Assange, who's, of course, been locked up for so long, because, as we all know, Biden himself was arrested and in prison for protesting, I believe he was visiting Nelson Mandela. That's his story, right? Of course, that's a lie, and that's one of the many reasons that Biden does not have empathy for Julian Assange, because Julian Assange is actually a truth teller. Not only does he tell the truth, but he exposes the truths that governments and corporations around the world are so invested in hiding. And on a more serious note, from what I remember, Joseph Biden was the vice president of Barack Obama. He was not the vice president for Donald Trump. And from what I remember, he ran against Donald Trump. He didn't try to support Donald Trump. And yet, why is it, I have a question, why is it that Barack Obama decided to not indict Julian Assange? And he decided to not indict Julian Assange in large part because he knew that if he went after Julian Assange, he'd have to go after all the outlets that published what Julian Assange published. And he didn't want to be seen prosecuting and persecuting the New York Times. So my question is for Joe Biden, why don't you actually do the right thing here? Why don't you do the thing that your president did? We all know we have our problems with Obama, obviously, but I'm making a rhetorical argument. And that is that why doesn't Biden cease being Trumpian? Why doesn't Biden do the right thing, come down on the right side of history, so he doesn't have blood on his hands? And I implore all of the media and all of the press to do that too. And I want to end by reading a quote. This is not from me, I'm quoting someone else, and this is what this person said. Okay, someone said, whatever he's guilty of, the motives were similar. The difference being I was a source, he was a publisher. He was like the New York Times and the others, more courageous than they are, obviously, but I identify with him totally. The notion that he's guilty of something that I, the good guy, wasn't is just false. That was Daniel Ellsberg, okay? Whatever Assange is guilty of, I'm guilty of. And Daniel Ellsberg is rightly venerated as a hero of the First Amendment and for a free press. So let's do what Daniel Ellsberg is telling us to do. Let's do what everyone who's on the right side of history is telling us to do. Let's do what justice demands that we do. Free Assange, Biden do the right thing, and drop the extradition, drop the charges. Stop being Trump puppet.
We're going to move it right along. The author of several books here, folks. One on Marat, one of my favorites. We had him on the show back on July 14th. Another lost cause, but the French won that revolution. We talked about Bastille Day. He's got a great opera on it. Would you please welcome Cliff Connor?
Oh, I got this. I want to thank the organizers of this rally for inviting me to be here today. I thought maybe as a historian I could offer some historical perspective to help clarify what the unconscionable persecution of Julian Assange by the American Empire is all about. Speaking of the American Empire, reminds me of where we're standing today and why. We're at a symbolic site that represents another empire, the British Empire, an empire of the past that exists only as memories of hundreds of years of robbery and oppression of most of the peoples of the earth. But that empire long ago crumbled into dust, and now what remains stands in humble servitude to its successor, the American Empire. I can think of no reason to be here today at the British Consulate other than that we had come here on several previous occasions to demand of the British government that it release Julius Assange from the notorious dungeons of the Belmarsh prison and to demand that it refuse the American Empire's call to extradite Julian Assange to the United States. Now that the British government has demonstrated yet once again that it has surrendered its sovereignty to American power, we have no further business here. Our demands must now be directed not to the puppet, but to the puppeteer. We demand that the Biden administration drop all of its unjust and Orwellian charges against Julian Assange. Sorry. I think I have an answer to the questions somebody said recently. Speaking of history, by the way, you may be getting tired of hearing a quotation from Mark Twain that says history doesn't repeat itself, but it does sometimes rhyme. Well, I'll tell you what rhymes with the Biden administration: Weimar Republic. Like the Weimar Republic, the Biden administration came into existence proclaiming itself to be a great bastion of democracy. The Weimar Republic was supposed to be the ultimate defense against the rising tide of fascism in Germany between World Wars I and II. And likewise, the Biden administration is supposed to be our great hope to block the advance of Trumpian authoritarianism in the United States today. How's that working out? If anybody wanted to make a movie about Biden's resistance to Trumpism, they'd call it Silence of the Liberals, and they'd cast Steve Bannon in the role of Hannibal Lecter. Silence of the Liberals features Biden and his Attorney General Merrick Garland, who have the legal authority to immediately end the unwarranted persecution of Julian Assange. Particularly reprehensible is the silence of the New York Times and the silence of MSNBC on the Assange case. Many astute civil libertarians have warned that if Assange is convicted of the charges against him, it will set a legal precedent that will allow the political authorities to block the New York Times and all other media in the United States from reporting anything that the authorities want to suppress. That has been called the New York Times problem, but the New York Times is simply ignoring it, whistling through the graveyard, as the saying goes. As I said, Biden and Merrick Garland have the legal authority to drop the charges against Julian Assange, but they have shown no inclination to do so. And a couple of speakers have already wondered why not. I believe it's because the real decision makers in this case are the Pentagon and the so-called intelligence agencies, the CIA, FBI, and NSA, who hate Assange with a purple passion for exposing their war crimes. And they want to make an example of him to strike fear in the hearts of anyone who might try to follow in Assange's footsteps. Julian Assange's only hope for survival is if we can mobilize enough loud protest and political pressure to force Biden and Merrick Garland to back off. I'll end now by bidding farewell to the British Consulate. So long, British Consulate, the sun has long since set on your empire, and all signs today point to the rapid setting of the sun on the American empire as well. Eventually it too will be history, but it's still capable of inflicting terrible damage on humanity as it exits the stage. Julian Assange is a prime target of its vindictiveness, and we must do all we can to defend him, to demand that all of the charges against him be dropped and he be released from prison immediately. Free Julian Assange.
Free Julian!
All right. We still have some more speakers. Susan Sarandon will be here shortly, and we're going to keep it going. Thank you, Cliff. It's a great book on Marat. You got to read it. Jean-Paul Marat, a whistleblower way back then, a great journalist who was hunted down by Lafayette, but he got away. We're going to bring up right now, he really doesn't need an introduction. You know, he's like the greatest guy in the world. He really is. He's been on this forever. The one and only Roger Waters.
Look at that. Good morning, whoever that was.
Good morning.
You happy? I'm happy. I feel like Henry V at Agincourt a little bit. There are those abed in England who will regret they were not here and all that bullshit. Except it's not bullshit, because there will be people abed who are not here who will regret that they were not here this morning on 2nd Avenue. I was very struck driving up here in my car earlier today by the thousands and thousands and thousands of aimless, or maybe they're not aimless, I'm not sure what their aims are, but people on their iPhones going like that, walking down the streets or looking in shop windows or standing around or anyway continuing with their lives, completely unaware that there's a couple of hundred of us out here taking to the streets because thanks to people like Randy, we have recognized that there is something appalling going on in this country and also in the UK where I'm from. We have, all of us together, connived to incarcerate one of the great men of the 20th and 21st century, Julian Assange, a great journalist, a great mind, a great intellect, and also an entirely innocent man, innocent of any crime. We had a thing on Randy Credico's program, Live on the Fly, and Niels Meltzer was on it. Niels is in in Switzerland today, so he can't be with us. But he made a speech on that TV program last night, and I asked Kelly, who was doing all the IT stuff for Randy last night, to send me a copy of it, and I'm going to read it out now because Niels isn't here, but he can say a lot of this stuff a lot better than I ever could. I have other things to say when I finish. I don't mean to keep you here all afternoon, but so here it is. Hang on. Morning, madam. Sorry. Randy,
Yes.
could you make that work for me? Thank you so much, darling. Well done.
Did something right today.
Yeah. It disappeared.
Here, I'm just going to hold it up for you.
No, don't hold it up. Let me hold it, because I'm not quite...
Hold it both sides.
On this... Oh! On the sides. Okay. I'm sorry about this. Don't touch the screen, they say. Okay. Right. So, thank you. A round of applause for my assistant.
Thank you.
She'll be doing a little tap dance for us later. Thank you,
Be on the
darling.
road with you.
Right. So this is what Niels had to say on the telly last night. Christ, it's gone dark. He didn't say that. I just said that, but it's all right. I can still read it. Niels said this. He said, receiving the new... Oh, fucking hell. It's gone off again.
What the... I'm going to hold the fucking thing up for you. Here.
Sorry. Okay. Receiving the news of this decision of the appeals court on the 10th of December 2021. The 10th of December is the International Day of Human Rights. The 10th of December 1948 was the day of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in Paris. Actually, I don't need the rest of this. I'm not going to read the rest of this out. This is too difficult. So put that down. Anyway, Niels went on and on and on, and mainly he was explaining it to us that the whole judicial legal process that they are trying to sell us, that Merrick Garland and Joe Biden and Blinken and all the rest of them, and the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Daily Mail and the Guardian newspaper in England and all the rest of the mainstream media, including MSNBC and Fox News and all the rest of these lying MFs, are trying to sell us that this has something to do with the law. It doesn't. As Niels Meltzer, who, as I'm sure you all know, is the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, who got involved in this case at the request of his employers, the United Nations of the peoples of this planet. Okay, and actually Niels constantly makes the point that when he was asked to look into the alleged torture of Julian Assange, he was reluctant to do so because the propaganda that they spread about Julian and about the two ladies in Sweden had already permeated so deeply into our consciousnesses that even Niels Meltzer wrinkled his nose. Luckily, Niels Meltzer speaks many languages, including Swedish, and he looked into it and discovered that narrative was a pack of lies, completely made up as part of the United States and UK's governments to demonize Assange and to put a stop to his work. Has anybody got a bottle of water?
Anybody got a bottle of water
I'm
that's
getting
not
very
open?
dry.
Bottle of water. You have one at that.
Just a sip. Anyway, so Niels, oh, thank you so much.
Hey, that one's not open. It's okay. This thing was tested earlier this morning.
If I die, I die. Fuck it. We have to get the word out. Okay, so, and I need to wet my whistle. Where was I? Niels Meltzer. Yeah, the nonsense about Sweden, all of that stuff. So again and again, oh, by the way, Niels Meltzer's book is coming out on February the 8th in English. So let's all buy it and read it and pass it on to our friends, because I haven't read it yet, but I'm certain it will be great. The point that Niels makes constantly, again and again and again, And so does Craig Murray, and so does John Pilger, and so does Randy Credico, and so does Susan Sarandon, and so does Katie Harbour, and so and on, is that this whole sordid, crappy affair is completely illegal. Completely illegal. The hounding of Julian Assange is against the law. All of it, from start to finish. And yet, they are pretending, and with the connivance of the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Daily Mail and the Guardian, and blah, 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 they are persuading all of these people wandering up and down 2nd Avenue this morning, punching their iPhones, that everything is fine, that they're swatting a grubby fly off the window pane of life, and that everything will be all right. Well, it won't be all right. And the reason that it won't be all right is because December the 10th, 1948 was the most important thing that's happened in my lifetime, with the Declaration of Universal Human Rights in Paris, which happened on that day. And they, all of them, are trying to negate it by removing the law from the grasp of the people and tucking it neatly into their waistcoat pocket. Yes, Mr. Ambassador, I'm talking about you, wherever you are here in the British Consulate, and saying the law is not for you, it is only for us, and we will lie and cheat about it with the connivance of the mainstream media until we absolutely get our way. Sorry, there's a bit of a kerfuffle in the crowd there for a minute. It's possibly a French counterattack. Once more into the breach, dear friends, or fill this wall up with our English dead. Sorry, Randy's distracting me a bit. All right, I'll leave that for the moment because I've been shouting a bit. I haven't finished. No, you're not. Shout. Yeah. Funnily enough, in 1982, I wrote a song. It's called The Gunner's Dream. And it's sort of my version of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I'll just tell you the last verse for any of you who can't remember it. It goes, a place to stay, enough to eat, somewhere old heroes shuffle safely down the street, where you can speak out loud about your doubts and fears, and what's more, no one ever disappears. You never hear their standard issue kicking in your door. You can relax on both sides of the tracks, and maniacs don't blow holes in bandsmen by remote control. And everyone has recourse to the law, and no one kills the children anymore. That's right. And I will rest on that.
All right. Roger didn't need an introduction, and neither does she. Let's bring her right up. Susan Sarandon. Give it up.
Oh, okay. Well, I can see that we're speaking to the choir here, that you already know the facts, and I honestly can't really follow Roger very successfully here, because that was amazing, and I'm glad that I caught that, and I thank all of you for being here. I was listening to Katie's podcast and was really laying out what has happened and why it's happened and why it's so important, and I just wish that everyone could listen to this, because there's so much misinformation, and you know, this is, as you know, so important, not just because of Assange, but because of what it means for us, for our kids, for the future of journalism. And I would question, the New York Times, the Washington Post had no problem publishing and commercializing and commodifying what Julian made available. And we don't hear anything from them now. And you would think that they would feel threatened for the future of what journalists are allowed to question. All of these trumped up charges and all of the hoopla, clearly is a very vindictive time right now, because it's not based on anything that's been proven. And I would just hope maybe I don't know who to even put pressure on, because clearly this is our government and our representatives who are so quiet, don't seem to mind. And so I don't know who we pressure in terms of our government, but maybe, again, we can at least talk to people who have these misconceptions and explain to them that no matter what you think of Julian Assange, this has to do with their freedom for information, that has to do with journalism, that has to do with journalism that just isn't about entertainment, and has to do with having an informed public. Because once this goes, we're really dead. And we're well on the way to that, as you all know, because that's why you're here. So I would just hope that we could start conversations during the holidays, whatever, even before that, when people have misconceptions, and explain to them what's at risk here. And maybe also try to put some pressure on the New York Times and the Washington Post and who else published it, because the Guardian, that consider themselves, the bastions of free speech, they didn't have any problem publishing this. So I would hope that we could somehow hold them responsible now to defend, if not Julian Assange, then the principle that truth should not be illegal. And we are, we should have the right to have the truth if this is a democracy. So thanks everybody for coming. And I can't sing anything, or I haven't written a song. But I thank you all for coming, and I this is a very scary day for me, and a very scary time for, I think, everyone. And we can't let it go by unnoticed. And thank you all for coming.
One second. Is this working? Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. We're going to have a few more speakers. I just want to say that this democracy is at stake here. This republic is at stake. Everybody has got to mobilize and fight, just like they did in 1936 in Spain. When the Abraham Lincoln Brigade went over there, they may have lost, but they went there. The republic was at stake. Franco, he won because England didn't do anything, France didn't do anything, U.S. didn't do anything except for volunteers. We have to be the new Abraham Lincoln Brigade and not let this republic fall because of this persecution of Julian Assange. We've got to be in the trenches, as Grandpa Al Lewis used to say. We need to get the asses of the masses on the street. You cannot be complacent. We've all got something at risk here. Seriously. So pressure. Forget about D.C. right now. They're doing nothing. They're standing by. Ari Melber and that crew, they're more interested in going to that bar at 30 Rock than they are protecting democracy. Get this guy out of here, please. He follows me around everywhere. If I had more fans like him, I'd be a success.
Oh my God! Yo, they don't care about my suffering. Look, they're not gonna know it. They don't care. They don't care about me. My suffering.
It's all about you. It's all about you. You've spent 2 years in prison. Why did I even give him any time? So why do I even pay attention? Get your cameras away from that guy. All right, it happens wherever I go. That gentleman shows up and interrupts. And I'm sorry about that, folks. And he's diverting attention from a guy who has been in jail in a dungeon for the last 2 years. And he's done nothing wrong except for inform you what our government is doing with the CIA in Vault 7. Aren't you happy that Julian Assange informed us of what the CIA has been doing for the last 500 years? They've been spying on us. They don't want us to know about it. But Julian, The great journalist exposed them. He exposed the crimes in Iraq, the crimes in Afghanistan, the crimes in Honduras by Hillary Clinton, the crimes in Tripoli by Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration, and all the other crimes that the DOD and the Department of State has committed at corporations. He exposed all of it. We're informed. We have a right to know about it. We have a right. They don't want us to know about it. We pay their goddamn salaries. And we don't know about it? Thank you, Julian Assange. We all thank you for exposing, informing this body politic of what the fuck is going on in this country. So let's get out there and continue to fight. It's, as Cornel West said, this is a fight worth going to jail for, even dying for, okay? That's the kind of fight we are, and as Susan said, in a very bad moment in this country and in the world consequently. They want to go to war with Russia, they want to go to war with China, they want to take Iran's oil, they want to take Venezuela's oil, and all the other goods around the world. We don't want that to happen, and we need the information. And we need Julian Assange out there and others to be emboldened like he has been. Let's not make him a martyr. Let's get him out before that happens. It's up to us. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Patricia Dahl, who's been involved in this for a long time.
I'm just here to introduce our next speaker. Her name is Margaret Hennessy. Margaret, I want you all to know, she's a member of the New York Catholic Worker, and she herself has just been released from prison for doing a civil action against nuclear weapons. She's here to read a special message from Julian Assange's very good friend in Australia, Karen O'Reilly, who is also a prisoner of war in the U.S. for doing another civil action here. Karen is a very good friend of Julian's and Gabriel's and the whole family, and she's going to read this very special message. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Hi, I'm Martha, actually, but that's okay. So, New York, the heart of empire, is telling us to eat, sleep, and get down. Well, we need to keep exposing these war crimes because these people are not untouchable. This from Kieran. Greetings and solidarity from Queensland, Australia. Julian Assange was born in Townsville, North Queensland 50 years ago, ironically during a state of emergency declared by the Queensland state government to facilitate the racially selected South African rugby tour. So today, Julian is presently imprisoned 12,000 miles from home in maximum security Belmarsh, London. I was outside the London Magistrates Court in support of Julian when he was first taken into British custody on December 7th, 2010, 11 long years ago. Julian has spent all his 40s jailed, electronically tagged under house arrest, or in the sensory deprivation of the Ecuadorian embassy in London, surrounded by British special branch and assorted spokes. I often visited Julian in the embassy over those 7 years and witnessed his decline in physical and mental health. In the final year of the siege, I witnessed the embassy transform from a place of refuge into a trap as his living conditions declined in an escalating atmosphere of hostility. In November 2018, I was asked to conduct a 24/7 vigil outside the embassy in what turned out to be the last 5 months of the siege. As many of you know from your own experiences of incarceration, the most important thing for a prisoner is an out date. Julian has never had an out date. It has always been and remains indefinite detention as he is hunted by the U.S. and British governments and sold out by our own Australian government. Like Julian, I was a prisoner of the United States serving 13 months as a federal prisoner for my role in the New Year's Day 1991 disabling of a B-52 bomber at Griffiths Air Force Base in upstate New York. In truth, Julian remains a prisoner of the anti-war opposition to the UK-US war on Iraq that started over 30 years ago. I recall being with Phil Berrigan and others at the Pentagon on Hiroshima Day 1990, when Margaret Thatcher and George Bush Sr. gathered there and announced the genocidal sanctions on Iraq and the mobilization for war. The war on Iraq, of course, escalated in 2003 with the invasion and occupation. It has since escalated and expanded across the Middle East. All the war-making state asks of most of us in the privileged West is to avert our gaze, to look the other way. In starting WikiLeaks in 2006, Julian Assange refused to look the other way, and in 2010, thanks to the heroic whistleblowing of Chelsea Manning, put the realities of the wars on Iraq and Afghanistan front and center. For such heroism, both the military resistor Manning and citizen journalist Assange were targeted for slander, torture, and long years of incarceration. We now know that the CIA were entertaining options of kidnapping and killing Julian. The British High Court last week ruled that Julian Assange should be extradited to a country that was entertaining options to kidnap and kill him. Dostoevsky said, "You can judge the quality of a society by the quality of its prisoners." I believe you can judge an anti-war movement by the solidarity it expresses with its prisoners. Thank you for coming today, everyone, and expressing your solidarity with Julian and outrage at the British Consulate. As a Catholic worker for the past 40 years, I have lived with many refugees, understandably fleeing the murderous brutality on the empire's fringes. Wonderful people from El Salvador, Chile, East Timor, Syria, Iraq. The two people who I have known personally to run into the headlights of empire were Phil Berrigan and Julian Assange. Julian today is someone like us who is suffering very much like them, those the empire regards as expendable. Stay staunch, keep the faith, free Julian Assange.
Bravo! Okay, our next speaker is a member of Socialist Action. He's also involved with the Assange Defense Committee, both nationally and locally. Marty Goodman.
I was told I only had 2 minutes, and I see that's not the case, so that's a tactical error on someone's part. All right. Last Friday, I watched the BBC coverage of Julian's sentencing. A person surely of Indian descent asked Rebecca Vincent of Reporters Without Borders, excellent person, incredulously, why it was that she did not accept the U.S. promise that Assange would not be jailed in America's worst prisons. I would call them gulags. But, quote, she said, America is a democratic country, the BBC reporter blathered. This from a reporter whose nation suffered from British colonialism, racism, and murder. In New Delhi, I personally visited a site where peaceful independence protesters were mowed down by Britain, a so-called democracy like the United States. BBC, we should believe Biden's promises to Julian from the country that plotted to kill him? Welcome to today's know-nothing journalism. Consider Biden's Joseph Goebbels-style promise not to continue Trump's racist deportations. It was a bold-faced lie. Haitians, black refugees, thousands of them are undergoing mass deportations a la Trump's new guidelines back to Haiti's hell house led by a U.S. puppet and a Haitian kleptocracy. Thank you, Julian Assange, for exposing the link between U.S. imperialism, the Clintons, and Haiti. All right. Thank you. Where'd my page go? All right. In the wrong order here. There we go. The UK is indeed torturing Assange, but yes, U.S. quote-unquote democracy tortured political prisoner Mumia Abu-Jamal for 40 years. And I was in Philly Saturday handing out Assange stuff. It was a wonderful demonstration. And this killed me. The day Assange was sentenced, Biden the puppeteer was babbling about democracy with Venezuelan CIA stooge Juan Guaido. Today, up is down, down is up. Welcome to 21st century capitalism. Welcome to Biden's English court. Assange is completely innocent. Move heaven and earth to educate, organize, and mobilize. Free Julian Assange and all political prisoners. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty.
Before I bring back a few people to say a couple of parting words, I want to let everybody know that there's a table over here where people can find and sign letters that will be sent to the appropriate parties, as people are saying something. And also to make sure that we're all aware of the fact that this isn't the only time for us to come out and hit the streets, and this isn't the only target, the UK consulate. We got a lot of people within our own government. We have people in the so-called media who's abandoned not only Julian's interests, but their own, and a lot of groups that just couldn't find it within themselves to be here today for whatever reason. So we have to be aware, be out in the streets early and often, because it really is up to us. And now I'd like to bring back Randy Credico.
Thank you, Chuck. Go talk to my friend over there. All right, thank you, Chuck, and everybody else involved in the groups here supporting Assange. I know you'll continue, you'll accelerate the activity. We have to multiply. I mean, we are in the beginning, just like the abolition movement was in the 1840s, when only a few people showed up. But by 1850, it really grew. So it really got big, and this has to be the same. We've got to follow that model. Just keep moving. More people will be involved. Expose the lies. We need people to get involved across the country. I've said this. I mean, it gets to be tiring because I say the same thing over again. So let me bring Roger up and Susan up to say some closing remarks together. Some? Quick. Like 12 pages. Quick.
We have to get more involved, he says. Who hasn't written Merrick Garland? Pass these out and write to Merrick Garland asking him to drop the charges.
Get closer to them.
Who hasn't written to the British Consulate? This is the address. Please pass these around. Who hasn't written to Julian Assange? Who needs the instructions to write to Julian? Please pass these around.
Okay.
Now, we should really be writing to Priti Patel, and since it's very hard to find her email now because the Crown has consolidated their power, and it's all the magistrates are under one website, UK.gov. And then you've got to find these people, and there is no. I used to write to Priti Patel, and you can't find her email anymore. Over at the table, I have addresses for the Washington D.C. Embassy and the Boston Embassy. The British Embassy in Washington is 3100 Massachusetts Avenue. You can look it up. Washington, D.C.
Information's at the table. Okay.
If you write one letter, write one of these letters of these many letters you can be writing. And all the information is at the table at the end.
Okay, thank you for and get that information at the table if Gary hasn't already passed you a piece of paper. All right, let's bring up, and then the grannies are going to come up afterwards to do a song, I believe. But let's get Roger and Susan up here to say some closing remarks.
Let's hear the song.
You want to hear the song? All right. Get the grannies up here right now. Usually the music closes the show, as you know.
You got to educate them.
All right.
We're on our way.
You're on. Okay.
Go this way. Go around that way.
Give them a round of applause. Yeah.
Come around this way, Dawn. Okay, all raging grannies gather. Yeah, sing with us. Everyone, sing with us. Okay, raging grannies are honored to be here to rage for Julian. And our song is To My Country 'Tis of Thee. Ready? Our country isn't free. Where's our humanity? We protest now. Julian Assange was right. Brought secret files to light. He's locked up and tortured day and night. Why is this all allowed? Our Julian is so bold, thinks that truth should be told. Is this a crime? Why not let Julian show where our tax dollars go? When we pay for war crimes, we should know. Why is he serving time? Editor, publisher, WikiLeaks founder, imprisoned and sick. U.S. don't extradite. Drop the charges. Do what's right for press freedom. Now we all must fight. Free Julian, make it quick.
I'm not following that, I can tell you. Roger, you get to close the show. Some parting words, Roger.
All right. You did a great job with that person. I'll just stand in your light, basking in your light.
Susan has decided to stand beside me while I say something. What do I want to say? I have this to say. We can't wait 10 years, Randy. Julian will not last 10 years. This has to happen really fast. So the table is there. Those letters are really important. However, it occurred to me that maybe this is a job for tech. You know, if we're going to reach enough people, I'm not saying we shouldn't sign letters and send them to Merrick Garland, but the idea that Merrick Garland is going to read a letter from me and not just throw it in the bin is laughable, frankly. But it's still, the gesture is extremely important. But somehow We have to get this word out. So somehow the fact that this is illegal and that they're killing this great man, somehow we have to get it to go viral now, today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, next week, but not in 10 years' time. This has to happen as fast as any of us can think of an idea of how it might happen. Today is a beginning, and we must make sure that we keep plugging away at it day in, day out from here on. And that's all I have to say. But again, I didn't organise this, but thank you for the people who did organise it, and also thank you to all of you for coming down here this morning. Okay, that's all we have to say.
All right, that's all she wrote. Say good night.
Good night, Gracie! Yo, how come only celebs speak? What about the rest? I'd like to know. Marty's a real one. Marty's a real one. I take it back. Marty is a real one. Doesn't speak. I'm causing problems. Fuck.
Hold on, folks.
Yeah, let's blow your whistle. Be whistle. If you don't have a whistle, a whistle that says I'm a whistleblower for justice, people in planet, please get one. And if you have one, let's do this.
Thank you. What you gonna do? Put some celebrity on me? Okay, let's go here the sidewalk. Nobody.
Hey,
Thank you.
Jamal. Stay alive, stay alive. Okay.
My thing. But no, you're not, right? Yo, next time you film me. Direct on the scene with Status Coup. He don't want
I'm gonna try to interview.
Because he knows about the MPP being bullshit. Oh, he runs security.
Keep it there.
Security. He runs to the black. Who's helping him? Yo, come on. Status Quo. That's some real information. I already got 3 stories from Status Quo. But some news is worth the
Dude,
point, some
dude,
isn't.
get out of my face.
Why?
Get out of my
Why?
face.
Or else what? I'm a fan, bro. What's the problem, man? Yo, I know you're going through things. I'm sorry about that.
Hey, folks, I'm waiting to try and speak with Gabriel Shipton. I'm waiting to try and speak with Gabriel Shipton, who's right next to me. Hey, can I speak with you?
Honestly, Nick Brown covering for the bullshit, yeah? Yo, Nick Brown,
I'm trying to speak with Julian's brother. Can you take your fucking things elsewhere? Thanks. Hey, I wanted to ask you, because Roger and a couple people spoke about how this is blatantly illegal, which you never hear about. I wanted to ask you, seeing what the UK court ruled, what is your hope for an appeal and the fight forward?
Well, I think it was the highest judge in Wales and England, right? The Chief Justice was one of the 2 judges that were that approved this appeal. So that means an appeal to the Supreme Court. Julian has until the 24th of December to appeal to the Supreme Court, but it's very likely that the Supreme Court will have to respect that decision because it's the Chief Justice. So I think it's very clear now that this case needs to be resolved here. We can't rely on the UK courts to stop this. There's no First Amendment in the UK. Press freedoms in the UK are not as respected as they are here in the US. You're very lucky you have these protections that they don't have in the UK. So I think here in the US people are keeping it a distance, but now we can see that it's coming here and needs to be stopped here, and the Biden administration could drop this tomorrow and Julian would walk free. We had Blinken talking at the Democracy Summit, talking about press freedom, talking about journalists around the world. This is an opportunity for Biden to send a message, Biden administration, to send a message to journalists everywhere that they're serious about press freedoms. Not only are they talking the talk, but they can walk the walk.
And can I ask you, it came out that your brother had a mini stroke, I believe. How is his health right now? Because I know it's been deteriorating.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another, he's feeling the pressure and it's immense, and it's years and years. It's been 11 years since he was first arrested in the UK. This is going to be his 3rd Christmas in the maximum security prison, and the pressure is bearing down on him. And you know, we can't be surprised that he's going to have a stroke. I mean, what's next? Is he going to, you know, we live in fear that he won't survive this, and I think, you know, he just has to go home. He just has to be given bail, or Biden has to drop the charges. Otherwise, he will die.
And lastly, I think it shouldn't be understated. The press doesn't ask Biden's administration about this, but his predecessor, President Obama, who Biden likes to, you know, attach himself to, his Department of Justice found that there was nothing they could do to charge your brother and not hold accountable the New York Times and others who do the exact same work. Do you think there needs to be more discussion about the fact that pre-Trump, the administration Biden was part of chose not to go after or prosecute your brother?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, you know, the Biden administration looks more like the Trump administration now. I mean, you know, I think everyone was expecting this to go away, and people are shocked that this is continuing. This Trump era attack on press freedoms is continuing under, you know, the Biden administration. I think, yeah, but people need to bring that up. Why aren't they doing this? Like Democrats, progressives, you know, they're standing by watching this happen. When I know that, you know, their principles are different. You know, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, it's all over. Guantanamo Bay. You know, Dick Durbin, the senator's trying to close Guantanamo Bay, and these are all results of Chelsea Manning's leaks. You know, so I know the values, the principles are different. So people just need to stand up and stand up for their principles.
And I think it should be understated, Julian's an Australian citizen, as you're from Australia. I haven't heard anything from Australia aside from a few parliament members in Australia. They don't seem to be speaking up for one of their citizens.
Yesterday, the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, Barnaby Joyce, who's actually in Washington, he made a statement saying that Julian Assange should not be extradited. So that is a big signal that even the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia believes that this case should be dropped and let go. So, you know, I think we're going to build on that, and the momentum is building around the world, and the pressure needs to come to bear on Congress people here. They need to take a side. They can't stay silent anymore. It's coming. It's coming here.
Thank you, Gabriel. Appreciate it. That was Julian Assange's brother, Gabriel Shipton. Let me see who else I could speak with here. Sorry about that. There was some guy with issues who's been disrupting the whole event. Kind of got in my face, so I got a little angry. Hold on. Hold on, folks. I'm going to see what I can do.
There's tons of stuff at the table.
For the big marches.
Yo, Susan, you a real one. Yo, Status Coup, you fake fuck. I just documented that shit. You fake fuck, Status Coup. Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Hey, Jordan. Hey, I'm with the Courage Foundation, Nathan Fuller. I'm with the Courage Foundation. I organize Assange support here in the U.S.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing this stuff.
Excuse me.
The third one.
Excuse me. Hey, Susan.
It's exhausting.
Susan.
I was shaved. I've shaved since.
Can I grab you for a minute? Yeah. The great Susan Sarandon. You know, Roger.
Congratulations for always being somewhere where mainstream media is not.
Why, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a disgrace, actually, that this is going on right in New York City. I see no one from the Times, Washington Post, anyone.
The Times was very gung-ho for that information when they could sell it,
right.
You know.
I wanted to ask you, you know, Roger made the point, and you don't hear this enough, that there's really no basis in law what's going on with Julian. Actually, the U.S. and the U.K. have an extradition hearing treaty. In that treaty, it says somebody can't be extradited for political reasons. I can't think of more of a political reason than this. Julian has no real, he's just been in holding.
He's also not an American citizen.
Exactly. So
he's not guilty of betrayal of the United States.
Right. And also, this indictment was very overly broad. There was no actual evidence ever provided that he hacked anything or anything like that.
There's too many sentences for people to pass along. That's the problem. You know, there's been starting very strongly, obviously, with the DNC because they were so angry about the emails, which I wish had been released during the primary, not waited until to the election. But all of this innuendo about all these loose things, the rape, all these things that were never proven, that were not even tried. But all that still lingers, and this is another thing that's so scary about this whole thing, is that once something gets out there, trying to get it clarified takes so much time that everyone's just going on clickbait and they have all these, you know, phrases for a lot of people, you know, that supposedly got Trump elected, that whatever. And it's so much easier just to go to that little bunch of short-term explanations than to actually understand what's going on. That's one of the problems. The other problem is what this says about journalism going forward. That anybody that questions anything, he's basically being prosecuted for asking questions.
Right.
Because I know that everyone says he hacked. He never hacked.
Right.
Obviously, that wasn't him. So what they've got him on is that he asked Chelsea Manning if there was anything more, which journalists, that's part of being a journalist, isn't it?
I've certainly egged on sources. Absolutely.
You've asked me questions.
Yeah.
So this says you're not allowed to ask a question, so somehow you're colluding or whatever. So what happens going forward if this stands? What does it say about our journalists? Was it Jim Acosta that Trump got mad and threw out because of a question? Everyone went crazy. Do you remember that? Not that they shouldn't have.
A grave threat to press freedom.
Okay, so they were mad, and I get it, but this is so much bigger. And why is there such a silence about it? You know, where is the connection then between all of this media that they can't make this important?
Right. Well, you also mentioned that these cables and the information that Julian released, it was in partnership with the New York Times, The Guardian, Der Spiegel, I believe. So they, like you said, were very happy to do it.
They chose the material. Right. They went through them and chose them to make sure they weren't damaging to any civilians or the troops or anything else.
So Rachel Maddow at the time, because this was still a time when they were covering Bush and anti-Bush for good reason, they loved Julian Assange then. It seems that there's been a conflation now. They turned on him, the media, because of this 2016 stuff, conflation and distortion about, he was working with Russia, another thing that there was no evidence for. But
still no evidence for.
But I wanted to ask you, this actual 2011 release, the New York Times, all these outlets worked with him on it, yet complete silence. I mean, I literally just saw for the first time Kenneth Vogel from the New York Times, credit to him, tweeted something out saying this was dangerous. Can you kind of speak to the collective media? I mean, they're opening themselves up.
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is the even bigger problem. That's really scary problem is not just if you like Julian Assange or if you want to go into his, but what it actually says going forward as a warning, as making a point to journalists. It's the same with the Stephen Donziger case, you know, in terms of activists that deal environmentally or deal with lawyers that are involved taking on corporations. So this means that if we don't have, you know, if we don't have information, if we don't have journalists, how do we go forward? And this is a really scary, scary thing that's happening right now. Even aside from just what it means for Julian, the even bigger question is what just has me freaking out, because I just can't believe how quiet it is. You know, somehow also it has to do because of them being blamed for Trump or defeating Hillary, that's now you're on a red team or a blue team, and this goes for everybody. This is, you know, it shouldn't matter if you're a blue or red state. This is just the truth. And when the truth is illegal, when you can't speak the truth, how do we know, you know, what's being done in our name? How do we, many years later, we find out about it? But in the meantime, all of these things, especially in terms of, you know, what Chelsea Manning managed to show in pictures of what was going on during that filthy war. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people that are watching this know all of that, so I'm preaching to the choir, but it's so frightening for me, the silence on the part of journalists more than anything, because I can't blame people. Have busy lives. They have their kids in school, and then there's COVID and all that stuff that's going on. It's hard to root out this stuff. There's not a lot of room for explanation. That's a journalist's job. They're supposed to tell you this is happening, this is important, but we don't hear about it when it deals with minorities. We don't, we're still not. Flint is just the same as what's going on in the Amazon and what's in Yemen. I mean, do we even?
8 years. They don't have clean water. No one's gone to prison.
You've covered that, but here we go again, because they don't have a strong enough voice, because it's not seen to be a priority, and so we depend on journalists. We depend on. People turn on their TV and it's just on a loop of misinformation.
And lastly, there's a large swath of the internet now and resistance, whatever, that kind of blame you for the financial crash, everything.
I think
Donald Trump.
Responsible for World War II.
Oh, okay, that's a new one. I wanted to ask you, there seems to be a contradiction, because they're very afraid of democracy, which I don't even know if we have one. Democracy is a threat because a lot of the right-wing threat, and there certainly is a growing conspiracy and white supremacy movement in this country. But they don't see the contradiction. Biden, on the same day that the UK court overruled the original judge, he was holding a democracy summit. Nobody seems to see, other than maybe people who think like you and I, they don't see a contradiction between Biden and the Democrats worried about white supremacy and that kind of stuff, but they don't see a contradiction with the threat to our democracy with Julian Assange.
How can they see that when they're being fed all this misinformation? How can you expect people that aren't curious or don't have someone to say, but there's this information? I mean, I have friends who are like, well, I don't know where you're getting your information from. And you say, well, it's not an opinion. These are not opinions. These are facts. Well, I don't know where you're getting your, we go back. We're at a time now where the truth is, people just doubt every source. And that's part of what's happened with COVID. And I don't blame them for doubting. Who believes the pharmaceutical industry? Nobody. But, then you have to go through and find science and look at statistics. So that's a lot of work. So people get on teams, and anything that crosses between the two teams, people can't process because they've been trained to think red or blue and nothing in between. And I think that, so anyone that has a voice, I'm not an expert on things, but because I do have some information and a way to get information out. That's all I do. I'm just a little flashlight that's, on information that people aren't getting. If it gives people a voice in the Amazon to know what's happening with Stephen, then I feel it's my responsibility to be able to put it out there when I know it's true, So that's what we have to do. We have to get information out, and we have to ask journalists but it's hard because if your salary is being paid, it's like politicians that are all bought, I was on a show once, morning show, and it was in the lead up, it was during the early days of Iraq, and I was there talking about a movie or something, and when we were off camera, I said to the interviewer, do you know Paul Rykoff? He works with the veterans. Maybe you should find. This was before all the scandal of what was happening to the veterans, right? She covered her mic and she said, keep asking those questions. We can't do anything. We can't do anything. And this was way back then. That was so terrifying for me, So God bless you for asking the questions. I hope you stay out of trouble.
Well, I'll say, to wrap it up, over the summer, the fall, and now the winter, I've seen you at almost everything I've covered, and I haven't seen these corporate outlets we're talking about in any of it. You're talking worker strikes, the coal miners that came up from Alabama, you were there. Protests
so many strikes now. We have to support, Kellogg, and there's a whole list and places where you can send $10 or whatever also to help them go through. But the miners are still out. I hope Kellogg doesn't. Sounds like they're digging in.
Well, I was going to say, for all the grief you get, you're basically at more things than the corporate press is. So credit to you.
I guess that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. Absolutely. You too. So that was Susan Sarandon, who has been at many events for Julian Assange. Let me see. And sorry if the camera angles are tight, folks. We have like no room on this New York City sidewalk. So doing our best. I think I need another back surgery after kneeling for an hour. We do have to get a mic stand, so I don't have to kneel again to hold up the mic. We didn't have a mic stand. But if you missed any of this, Roger Waters spoke, Susan Sarandon, Randy Credico, a lot of kind of local activists, Julian's brother, Gabriel Shipton, who is from Australia and has been to America numerous times, fighting on behalf of his brother for his brother's release. We'll cut up those interviews into shorter clips and post it here on the channel. But, you know, it is, every time I come and cover an event to, you know, in the pursuit of Julian Assange's freedom, it's very illuminating because, like Roger Waters said, you basically see people kind of just passing by, looking at their phones, living their life in La La Land, and have no idea really what's going on as far as Julian Assange, whatever you think of him. Like, this isn't a thing where you have to like a person or like Julian Assange. Maybe you're one of these Hillary Clinton stans who think he's responsible for Trump. He's not. I was on the road covering the campaigns. I could tell you it was NAFTA. That's why Trump won. It was NAFTA, not Russia. Anyway, the cognitive dissonance of society when a journalist and a publisher is being tortured, really. I mean, he is in what they call the Guantanamo Bay of the United Kingdom. The prison he's in the UK, they call it the Guantanamo Bay of the UK. It is maximum security. And this is a non-violent offender, if you even want to call him offender, but they have had him in Belfast prison now for 2.5, 3 years. He just had a mini stroke, it came out, at the end of October, which I asked his brother about. I'm not a doctor, but if you are in prison, severely depressed, severe anxiety, you're not getting enough light, you're not getting enough things that normal human beings need to keep healthy, yeah, you're going to deteriorate. And like somebody else said, he's been in prison his entire decade, in his 40s, he's been in prison. So, yeah, it's extremely urgent. I also think that, frankly, I personally don't think Biden's the one making these decisions. Sure, he's the president. But this is the military-industrial complex, folks. Credit Obama. I don't credit Obama on many things, but at least he had the sense, and his Department of Justice had the sense not to go after Julian Assange. Probably not for altruistic, moralistic reasons that they shouldn't go after Julian Assange, but just because they didn't want to endanger their pals at the New York Times and the rest of the establishment press. But Biden doesn't even seem to have that sense, and he seems to be succumbing. He seems to be succumbing to the CIA and the FBI. Want to come over?
Yeah. Someone just drove by saying free Assange.
Oh, really? Oh, great. I'm here with Katie Halper of the Katie Halper Show. You've done a lot for Stephen Donziger as well as Julian Assange. So I was just talking to Susan Sarandon and Gabriel. Can you kind of talk about the cognitive dissonance here? Like, people are just living their lives, and I mean, this man is being politically tortured. I hate to say it, but he's slowly dying. I mean, he just had a mini stroke. But it seems like the world moves on, particularly in our media.
Yeah, and it's not hyperbolic to say he's being tortured, right? Because Nils Melzer, who some people referred to during this event, who is the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, who has a great book out, by the way, called The Trial of Julian Assange, he is someone who his mandate is to determine whether people are being tortured. And he determined that Julian Assange was definitely under, and he breaks it down because he's a very learned man, and he has these different criteria for torture, and he's definitely being tortured. He's definitely been tortured. I think that the silence around this from the media is pretty disturbing. It's not shocking anymore, but it should be shocking. You have covered it a lot, so I want to tip my hat to you also. And yeah, the dissonance, I mean, I just keep thinking about, it really drives me crazy, the whole discussion of Trump which he was, like he was an attack on the Fourth Estate, attack on free speech, on the First Amendment. But why is it okay? Yeah, I know they're talking. Sorry. Why is it okay for Biden to be siding with Trump? And when I bring this point up, obviously I bring this point up as someone who's very critical of Obama, but I think it's a worthwhile point to make for people who aren't already with us on Assange, we don't have time to necessarily deprogram them about Obama and his drones.
Take them away from Maddow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can keep your Maddow, and you can, because Maddow once at least said something about Assange. I mean, it's incredible that all these people who praise themselves for being champions of free press and the First Amendment, the Fourth Estate, who position themselves as on the receiving end of Trump's attacks, like, are they just in denial? Is their loyalty to the security state, the national security, the intelligence community, is that what it is? It's so important to them that they don't care about a free press? Right. I mean, it is stunning and it's infuriating. And then you get people who say, "Oh, he helped." I mean, people have no idea what he's been charged with. They don't know the fact that something else we didn't even have time to get into because there's so much to cover. But the fact that their star witness, the state's star witness against Assange, is a convicted sex offender, embezzler, who's been diagnosed as a sociopath or psychopath. I'm sorry about that. I don't want to be. I'm not defaming or libeling him because it's one of the two, and who admitted to lying.
Yeah, he recanted his statement.
Yeah, he recanted. Like, how are you going to, if the Justice Department had any sense of justice at all, or shame or decency, they'd be, not only would they drop the charges, drop the extradition, but they'd run away from it. They'd want to have nothing to do with it. This is an indictment that was made under Trump, by Pompeo. They are tainted. They are absolutely complicit with this Trumpian project, with this, perjured testimony. It's actually a real sad statement.
Well, also the fact that they've never actually provided evidence that Julian Assange hacked anything. The indictment is beyond vague. Just basically talks about him goading Chelsea Manning, which I don't know. I would assume the New York Times goaded whoever gave them Trump's taxes, right? Is that illegal? So it seems like there is no evidence. The other thing that we didn't talk about here and was mysteriously missing from this decision, Yahoo News report came out that the U.S. was plotting to kidnap and assassinate Julian Assange, which, I don't know, call me a cynical Susie, I would find it hard to believe assurances from a country that they're going to treat him, humanely in prison if they were plotting to assassinate him.
Right, another aspect of it, right? So this is, again, hi, Merrick Garland. I thought you were a decent guy. I didn't really think that. But you sell yourself as decent, not Trumpian, right? So why don't you actually drop the extradition, because you are literally pursuing something that is Trumpian, that is tainted by a witness who recanted, and tainted by Pompeo's CIA, which discussed kidnapping and killing Julian Assange. Right. It is a total. It's such a miscarriage of justice. That's almost like a euphemism, or almost like an understatement for what it is. And again, you have Daniel Ellsberg warning people about what this is for free press. And a lot of people out there, if you're listening to this and you don't like Assange, well, you probably like Ellsberg, right? Like, all liberals like Ellsberg, so maybe listen to Ellsberg, who said he didn't do anything differently from.
The last question, to me, I don't really get involved with this whole fraud squad stuff. Like, I criticize them, but, I take it case by case. But it is illuminating. You did have AOC and Rashida Tlaib. They did write a letter for Stephen Donziger, right, yeah. But I've heard, diddly squad on Julian, particularly from Bernie, who's to Bernie's credit, has done a lot for the progressive movement. But his voice on this, AOC and others. I interviewed Ro Khanna about something else. I asked him about Julian Assange. He gave me a dodge. Well, I haven't really looked closely into it. So what are your thoughts on just the people that we would expect and need to cause a ruckus about this in Congress are silent?
It speaks to how much Kool-Aid has been drunk by so many people, I think, in this post-Trump world, and the irony is that it just lets the Democratic Party be that much more Trumpian. I think it is a scandal that the squad hasn't spoken out on this. It is, again, this criminalizes all forms of journalism. One of the reasons, right, like we referred to this earlier, but Obama, I think, didn't indict Assange because of the New York Times problem, right? And
The New York Times, which co-published a lot of this stuff.
yeah, so if what he did was so criminal, then so was what the Times did. But of course, so that's why they went on the helping Manning figure out the password, which many people would consider just part of journalism. When you're exposing state secrets that show war crimes, and I think Snowden has a point where it says something about how, like, if you get in trouble for revealing crimes, and we're living in a criminal society. I would urge people to put aside their fear, the Kool-Aid that they've drunk, this like broken brains, Russiagate broken brains. I mean, I think that's a huge part of it, honestly. A huge part of it is that we see this post-Trump brainworms, and Assange has been put into, he fills two roles for kind of blue check liberals, right? Because of the Trump stuff, he's blamed for Trump, and he's blamed for publishing stuff on Hillary Clinton. So he is like taps into two totally irrational parts of people's brains, and Russia, right? So it's like they associate him with Russia, Clinton's loss, Trump's victory, and forget it. Like, good luck having all these people, again, who claim to be fans of the Constitution, rule of law, liked Obama for being the statesman, not being Cheeto Mussolini. You're all with Cheeto Mussolini unless you demand freedom for Julian Assange.
I also want to just finish with you, because I was listening to you and Matt interviewed, I'm going to botch this, the U.S. Rapporteur?
The UN Special Rapporteur on torture, yeah.
The UN Special Rapporteur on torture. And he said, I wrote it down, the criminals walk free. Telling the truth about crime becomes criminalized, while committing crime enjoy impunity. Yeah. And I thought that was really powerful, because it's really what happened with Donziger and Assange.
And with Snowden, and with Manning, and with John Kiriakou. All the people who expose the crimes are the ones who pay the price, and all the criminals walk free. It is stunning. I mean, it's almost like you can't make it up. Like it would be an over-the-top, like Ray Bradbury book or something.
It's dangerous to be right when the government is wrong.
And I think also something that really stands out to me covering all this, all the money that is invested in going after Julian Assange, Stephen Donziger, the others you mentioned, it changes the discussion from Chevron poisoning the Ecuador, from war crimes that no one has ever been prosecuted for on behalf of the U.S. military. So all of this is like a playbook to just change the narrative and change the focus away from the actual crimes.
Right, which should be the focus, right? So Chevron poisoning the Ecuadorian Amazon water, leading to higher cancer rates, higher birth defects. Literally, they've killed people. They have blood on their hands. So does the U.S. government, and we know that. I mean, we know that if you study history, but we also know that from Collateral Murder, which is the video that Chelsea Manning leaked and that Assange published, which shows just like people in the military gleefully shooting down people who are unarmed. I mean, they're unarmed. They know.
And a Reuters journalist.
And a Reuters journalist, yeah. Where is the outrage about that? Why aren't we up in arms about that? And really, anyone who thinks that the Pentagon Papers were a contribution to freedom, democracy, a free press, a healthy democracy should be up in arms about this. Because if Daniel Ellsberg himself sees this as parallel, then the rest of us need to. He's the expert.
Thank you, everyone. Check her out, the Katie Halper Show on YouTube, and Useful Idiots with Matt Taibbi. There's her button, the Katie Halper Show, and Useful Idiots with Matt Taibbi. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And you've been on that too.
Yes. So that was Katie Halper. It's closing down a little bit here, but hey, honestly, to me, we live in the United Corporations of America, as I always tell you. This is a real fucked up country, and honestly, I saw it a couple years ago in Standing Rock, and it's only evolved since then. This is fascism, folks. I don't use that word lightly, but this is the merging. This is the merging of the government with the corporate state. Because the military-industrial complex, that's just Code 4, Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, all of them. This is fascist. When somebody who literally, Julian Assange, what makes him different than whomever at the New York Times go to the source to give them Trump's taxes? Should that person be criminalized? Because I probably could tell you whoever gave the New York Times Trump taxes was not authorized to do that. The only difference is it's Trump and it's his taxes. So that's proper, great, heroic investigative journalism. And this, Julian Assange, because of propaganda about 2016 and he elected Trump, which is a bunch of nonsense, I was on the road. I covered 40 to 50 Trump rallies. I got the therapy bills to prove it, okay? It had nothing to do with Russia. It's very simple why Donald Trump won. We've had a 40-year controlled demolition of the working class in this country. People in the Midwest, particularly, jobs were sold to Mexico and China. Not that I'm not for jobs in Mexico and China, but not at the expense of jobs here. So whole swaths of the country were destroyed. Literally, I've gone through ghost towns that used to be vibrant communities, closed down plants, closed down storefronts, closed down community centers. The streets, you can't even drive in it. It's got so many potholes. That's why Trump won. He sold them a bill of goods. He didn't mean it, but I'm going to bring your jobs back, and to hell with NAFTA, and blah, 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 blah. Had nothing to do with Russia. And if we had journalists, they would also tell you, hey, look at the exit polls in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan. You know, voters gave information on what was behind their vote. The number one issue in those states, trade. Trade, as in NAFTA. Had nothing to do with Russia. But because we have this corporate propaganda, because we have a media system that's basically a bunch of people wearing makeup, doing PR, and pretending to be journalists, they have villainized Julian Assange. And I got news for you folks. At this point, I don't want to lie to you, he's going to be extradited. It's going to be a show trial, unless something dramatic changes where enough pressure is put on Biden. And by the way, Biden's just a puppet. This is the CIA who's pulling the strings here. Biden is just a conduit for the CIA. Credit to Obama. I don't get the chance to credit Obama much. At least he had enough fortitude to say no, because I'm sure the CIA was pressuring him. But you saw it with the Yahoo News story. The CIA was literally plotting with Mike Pompeo to kidnap and assassinate Julian Assange. How is that not relevant in a court proceeding? And, you know, I'm not a doctor, but Julian Assange, I think he's 50. He just had a mini stroke. He's staying in what they call the Guantanamo Bay of the United Kingdom, okay? So it's not a good situation. And at the end of the day, people, listen, I'll go cover any protest. People need to stop marching, you know, around a couple blocks and expecting change. You got to start demanding change with your wallet. Not just about Julian Assange, by the way. I mean, all of this is a continual stream. You have states around this country creating eco-terrorism laws to try and criminalize environmental protest. I mean, from Assange to Donziger, the list goes on and on. I try to cover it all, but I'm only one person, and Status Coup only has, at the moment, two people, myself and my editor, Colin. Jamal is behind the camera shooting this. So I really hope more people wake up, because I got news for you. Whether you like Assange or not, whether you buy the bullshit about Russia or not, if this precedent is set for Julian Assange, it could come for your preferred journalists at the Times, the Washington Post, Associated Press. And to credit Kenneth Vogel, who works at the New York Times, he tweeted yesterday that this is dangerous. He's a New York Times reporter, and that takes guts, because it ain't popular opinion at these corporate outlets. So thank you for watching. We'll continue covering Julian Assange. Right now, Julian Assange and his team have about 2 weeks, I believe, to file an appeal of this appeal that was overturned the original ruling. But this is not some faraway, distant thing happening in the UK. It's very relevant. It's relevant to me. I mean, I've broken several stories on the Flint water crisis and the cover-up where we obtained documents from a criminal investigation. I'm not going to get into the behind the scenes of that, but we obtained documents, confidential documents, from a criminal investigation. So, however we got it, which was legal, by the way, should I be criminalized for exposing that the former governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder, who, by the way, isn't in prison and has only been charged with a misdemeanor for presiding over the poisoning of a city of 100,000 people, should I be criminalized for exposing that he knew about the toxic water a year and a half before he told Congress? He knew about the toxic water a year and a half earlier than he told Congress. He knew about it and did not notify the residents of Flint, 53% black, by the way. Should I be criminalized for exposing that? Or for, goading sources? It's absurd. This whole thing is absurd. And it is creeping fascism. And I can tell you, I was at Standing Rock, and all the way to this, from Flint to Standing Rock to Donziger to the worker. I mean, literally, Amazon just kept the fucking warehouse open during a tornado. By my count, 6 have died already? That's not going to be, no.
That's the tragedy.
Say that again. Free plug for Status Coup.
No one's going to cover it other than Status Coup. I mean, I'm standing here to try to give thanks to you, Jordan, and obviously you've graciously brought me to the camera, but it's because nobody wants to give this coverage. I mean, we're looking at a man who is being murdered for exposing the war crimes of the empire, and we are begging Jordan to go on his knees and beg. I mean, like, I will never cancel. If there's one subscription I will never cancel, it's Status Coup, because this is real journalism. You talk about that, getting on the streets, talking to real people, and look, these are stories where you'll see headlines coming 6-7 months ahead out of something like this, but only the people who are aware of the legal ramifications, the details, people who are willing to cover this are coming out. And it's sad to feel that your democracy is going away from you. You're telling me, I'm looking you in the eyes right now, what it was like at Standing Rock, when I'm sitting there and I'm giving you $5 a month just to get you in there, and now I'm seeing you here 4 years later, and I can see how you're just in a vestige trying to get us. Like we're never gonna get there because of the fact that it's still just you in this, and you can see I'm all over the place because there's a lot of emotions here. But man, I appreciate your coverage and coming out here and to giving a voice to the people who understand that our press freedoms are at stake, that the empire is encroaching on us, and that these forces are not just amorphous. They're not just things that you read about in a book. If you come out into the streets and you talk to people like Jordan, people who are understanding, I mean, frankly, for the amount of work that you've done, just reading and covering and being involved, I mean, that's an orders of magnitude more than everyone who's doing it. New York Times, Washington Post, all these different mainstream media outlets. I mean, I've never seen. Yeah, you can see I'm quite emotional here.
What's your name?
My name is Rowie.
Thank you, Rowie.
I appreciate it.
Like I said earlier, it's dangerous to be right when the government is wrong. And Daniel Ellsberg was my favorite whistleblower. And even Benedict Arnold, though he worked for the British, but he did something that made the difference. And thank you for freedom of speech. Thank you.
I just want to end with something, because Rowie mentioned something, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the shoulder at all. But I got to tell you something, and you can tell if you're watching on YouTube by the views, big tech is also suppressing the truth. We have 123,000 subscribers. I'm lucky if we get over 250 live viewers. Okay? Half the time, people don't even get notified when we're live. I got to send fucking smoke signals in the air so people know when we're broadcasting. Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball, God bless them, they said Status Coup is the most suppressed independent channel on YouTube. And why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Because, no disrespect to my friends who are commentators, it's a little different actually getting out there and putting a fucking face to how ugly this country is. They can't hear you.
Well, no, I'll just say that there was a campaign where there was a concerted effort, it seemed, among progressive media to hire journalists like you to go out into the beat. And I paid good money for that shit.
Are you talking about a former network by the name of TYT?
A former network. And you think, and that's obviously why I said, with such emotion, that I will never cancel. There's one thing I look at my bills every month and I will never cancel it, Status Coup. Because that's real journalism. That is on the streets. And so, like, when you really want to look at your decisions, as someone like me who paid good money to watch Cenk pontificate from a desk, you really have to question yourself when you see Jordan on a road trip for 4 hours, going into bumblefuck nowhere in Wisconsin. And, like, that is the real coverage. That is the real shit. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, like you're saying, clicks will drive it all. So in the studio, they can just pontificate and put some graphic about Assange or whatever the headline is for today, and then they can collect their paycheck and continue the cycle. But coming into the street, putting yourself on the ground, and through knowing that Jen had to leave you, all these, this is real. This is a real journalism. This is a real organization that's on the ground. You're a human being. Support Status Coup out there. If you could spare just a couple of dollars a month, go become a member. Go sustain real journalism that's in the field, talking to Americans who actually understand what is at stake. Please understand, Jordan has been out in the streets for years, covering all these different rallies, and of course now you can see people like me, the loons, who will stay this long, because we know that the people who will stay this long are the real journalists, the people who are willing to actually cover the truth, as opposed to, dress it up for us. So yeah.
Thank you, Ben. And I'll wrap by saying this. I think the online left, whoever considers them the left anymore, they need to kind of look in the mirror. I've really tried to stay out of the fray and not get into food fights that other people are having. But I just see on the left, particularly over the last year, so much interpersonal bullshit and hot takes and channels responding to other channels. Meanwhile, I mean, this guy's getting tortured. And that, some of these channels have covered it, but I really think there's such a focus on clicks, and I get it, because I'm not, occasionally in my life I've done a clickbait thing. You get like 10,000 views and you want to do more of that. But the reality is, the only way Julian Assange is going to be freed is with a massive organized campaign of pressure. And that also starts on the left, because the independent media has to be organized to shame the corporate media. Because believe it or not, they can be shamed, but it takes a whole lot of organization and effort. So I just ask my friends at independent media, cover this every day, really every day. I try to cover it as much as I can. Remind people what's going on. Connect what's going on with Julian Assange to other things domestically, because it's all interconnected. You wanted to say something before I go?
Yeah, it is about the suppression of Status Coup. And
what's your name?
Michael White, and we've talked before. I'm Citizens Defending Libraries, among other things. Suppression of Status Coup, suppression of information in general. So with Citizens Defending Libraries, we've talked about books being taken out of the libraries being shut down, the hours being kept short, the libraries being underfunded. That's about the suppression of information. The reason Julian Assange is locked up, again, it's a suppression of information. I'm not that good a speaker, so I'd like to have someone else speak for me. Let's have Steve Dunn. Oh, we can't have him here because he's locked up in prison. Well,
He did just get released home, but yeah.
He's still serving a 6-month sentence. Yeah. So let's have Daniel Hale come up. He's locked up too. He's in a CMU, that stands for Communications Management Unit. That basically means he's like Julian Assange being held incommunicado. So it's about the fact that he's got a message of peace like Julian Assange has a message of peace, and that needs to be shut down. It's an out of sight is out of mind concept, and when you've been talking about people in La La Land looking at their phones, you got to wake up. You got to pay attention that out of sight can't be out of mind. So when we keep getting shut down like this, we're going to have to start talking in code, right? Because we get too close to peace. Last night I had the strangest dream I ever dreamed. I dreamed the world. Oh, you're going to sing about war? No. Shut that down. Now you're in a CMU, a Communications Management Unit. And when Daniel Hale or Julian Assange is in a Communications Management Unit, and that's where they'll probably want to put Assange, there's a wall around them, and you think of them being in prison. but that wall is also the wall around us. It's the wall around all the information that we're not being able to get.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate
it. By the way, Status Coup is suppressed, but one way to get to it is if you go to the Citizens Defending Libraries post about Steve Donziger. It links to your interviews, which have been excellent, so thank you.
And for those who might not know, because the media certainly didn't cover it, Stephen Donziger, I think at the end of last week, was released, at least from a prison. He's still carrying out the rest of his sentence from home, so he's still basically under house arrest. At least he'll be with his family for the holidays, and he has proclaimed that he's going to continue to fight. Chevron, let's remember, Stephen Donziger has been disbarred as a lawyer based on lies. Basically, has been bankrupted by Chevron, who has fought him with God knows how many millions they've gone after Stephen Donziger. But last week he was at least released after a month and a half serving in prison, which, by the way, that prison had a COVID outbreak while he was there. So my battery's running out, so that means that's how you know you're good, when you stay for last call and your battery's running out. Thank you for watching. What time is it?
You put it to good use.
Thank you. If I can make it home in time and charge my battery, I'll be interviewing Shama Sawant later. She, it looks like, has defeated the Seattle City Council member, if you don't know. Looks like she defeated the right-wing recall against her in Seattle, which is very good news. One of the only loud and proud socialists in local city government, and the right wing, Amazon, has been fighting her. So I will be interviewing her later today if I can get home in time. So stay tuned for that. And if you can, others have vouched for us. Support us. This costs a lot of money. Just the trip we just took when we were in Iowa and Illinois and Buffalo for 2 weeks, covering the John Deere strikes, covering India Walton's election, covering Starbucks union drive, covering the Mercy Hospital worker strikes, all of that, me and a cameraman, multiple states, multiple cities, hotels, rent-a-car, food, equipment. We had to go to Best Buy 3 times. It cost us probably $6-7 grand. And trust me, we didn't make more than that on the trip. So support on the ground reporting. You can contribute wherever you want, but it doesn't cost that much to do hot takes. It costs a lot to actually get out there, pay people to shoot, pay Colin for our travel, our equipment. We are looking for a marketing person now. So please support us. StatusCoup.com/join. StatusCoup.com/join. Join for $5 a month. That's 15 cents a day. $5 a month. StatusCoup.com/join. Thanks for watching. Peace out.